Forbes Books presents Sustainable Leadership and Disruptive Growth with David Radlow. Transformation for a new and better world. Here's David.
I'm back with Eric Tannenbaum, the executive producer and founder of the Tannenbaum Company. We've been talking about his rise through the ranks of Hollywood and how he's become one of the most successful entertainment executives over the last several decades. Now, Eric, your IMDb page is filled with dozens of hit shows, many of which have taken on iconic status. But which one of them are you the most proud of?
Yes, and I've been fortunate enough to be involved with a bunch of different ones. As a studio person back in the day, and we did a show called Mad About You that I was very proud of and was very involved in helping to put together and orchestrate, and it was something that a lot of people related to. And the really nice part about our business is how many people you can reach. And when you were somewhere, people would say, "Oh my God, that's me and my wife, or my boyfriend and I," or all that kind of stuff. The connective tissue that people can say, "Okay, I understand that," and then you make it funny and relatable. Was very rewarding. As a producer, obviously, 2.5 Men was a giant hit for everybody. We didn't create the show, we don't write it, but we put it together. It changed a lot of people's lives. It was a big hit show. A fantastically talented group of people involved doing it, and we did 12 years of that show, 281 episodes. That's rewarding. We've had a lot of other wonderful shows. We have a show on ABC right now called Home Economics that I'm really proud of, based on a close two writer friends of ours. One of them, it's about his family, the economic disparity within the 3 siblings. It just seemed like such a natural, clean idea. Hopefully season 4 will get picked up soon. Topher Grace is a star. I'm really proud of that show. We did a big musical at NBC for the last 2 years called Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. I did not grow up as a musical theater guy, but this was a passion idea of the writer who we do a lot of business with, and it was just a really fun show to do together. I did 5 seasons of a show with my friend Tracy Morgan called The Last OG, and I love that guy and saw him through. And from the sidelines, saw him go through just horrible tragedy, losing a good friend, almost dying in a terrible car accident, and then, surviving, coming out the other end, and being able to make that show together with him was just a really rewarding experience. It was fun, and he's brilliant. And there's been a lot of shows. I think I mentioned a show called The Moody's that I did at Fox. That was just a passion show of mine. And even though it, after 2 seasons, didn't find the audience we hoped for, I'm really proud of it. It was really good, and worked very close with people that I'm very close with, writers that I love. And there have been a lot of projects that we're working on now that I feel really positive about and really close to, and just trying to see if we can give them life and at some point. But I feel very fortunate that we it's about the people we work with, and we continue to work with really talented writers and filmmakers, and that is a privilege to come to work every day.
As we go looking back and then looking forward, when you take a look at some of the biggest opportunities of growth and innovation, even with the challenging environment that you have, what does Eric Tannenbaum see?
I see it very challenging. I think that all these companies are for the last couple of years it's been about growth and expansion, and now it's about stock prices and profitability. So unfortunately, you're seeing a lot of laying off staff and overhead, and canceling shows and cutting content prices. All the big companies are going through this right now, and crazy economic times that we're going through. So that's a huge challenge. And then trying to sort of figure out what your best lane is, and sort of how to actually make things happen, to sell things, to break through the clutter, to get noticed. Even though, as I said, there's never been more content on television. You'll see a lot of them come and go. And so what's going to make them stand out? And that's, again, that's completely subjective. And we are not the gatekeepers. We put product forward. Hopefully people will like it and want to make it and buy it and all that stuff. But, the people that control these platforms and streaming services and networks are the ultimate people that have to make those decisions. But I think the thing that we can hopefully keep doing is bringing them good ideas and good projects with good people. And that is I think, our strongest skill set of putting good ideas together with good people. There still is always going to be a need for content. It's figuring out what that looks like. We're at an independent studio, makes it a little bit harder because they don't have the giant streaming platforms that everybody else does. But it's for us, it's all about staying the course in terms of putting together the best projects you can and making those projects as undeniable as you can. Like I said before, with elements that feel very attractive to people. So that stayed consistent, but it's the challenges of getting that done just makes it much more difficult than it was years ago.
You can see that it becoming more challenging, but how does Eric manage his time? Because you're a busy executive producer, you've been extraordinarily successful. What are your tips and what do you do in order to stay balanced and the most effective?
It's a good question, and I think as I've gotten older, I've learned it more. Certainly, having a family and having kids and prioritizing things, it matters. It is interesting now, though, being in this role. You don't have to be in an office every day. You can communicate people, in so many different forms. But as I said before, you're never not working. Sadly, I'm never not looking at my phone. Sadly, there's never not scripts to read or things I have to respond on or give notes to and stuff like that. But I think if you didn't love it, kind of where we really started from the beginning, if you're not passionate about it, and a lot of people say to us, well, why are you still doing it? I'm not, in some ways it's a young person's game. I'm still doing it because I really like the people that I work with. I love our studio relationship. We have a great relationship with our agents and our agency who brings us a lot of material. And I still, I was listening to a thing about the Warriors this morning. I was like, they were all talking like there's still a lot of gas in the tank. I think there's still gas in the tank with myself and my company. And I still like coming to work every day and getting up. And there is something incredibly rewarding about working on something you're excited about and hearing a great idea or, working with super talented people and trying to help bring their ideas to life. Like that is the part that keeps us going forward. But all that being said, balance is tremendously important and having time to do the things you like, mentally, physically, keeping your life, keep sane. Because if it's all one thing all the time, that's just not me. I can't do that. Other people can and do it well. So I really do try to balance it. And I say the same thing. We have a lot of young people that work with us and encourage them to, have a life and to meet new people. And I have fantastic relationships and friends in the business that have been my friends for 100 years. So, we can kind of do both and mix both together. But I think having the best of all worlds, it is really important. But I think being passionate about what you're doing is really what matters because it keeps you going.
I don't think 100 years. Okay. I know you're pretty young. What do you think the importance of one-on-one mentorship and the development of future leaders? How do you see that? And what should someone that's starting out or going into the business do in order to find the right mentor?
I think you have to cast a wide net. You have to reach out to people. I think, people from their colleges they graduated to, I'm sure there can people that are connected to the business. I was a member of a thing called the Hollywood Radio and Television Society for a long time and was on the board. And they have a junior program and a mentorship program. And I had and doing something like that. And I had each year a new person. And, every month or two you'd meet with them or you'd have a phone call or you're just kind of in all different capacities. Some were writers, some wanted to be executives, some wanted to be producers. There's no exact direct path. I do feel like, people at least that I know in our business, they want to give back because we all started somewhere. My first jobs were not glamorous, but they, helped me get to where I was today. So I think trying to find a connection, or even if you're cold calling or sending emails or sending resumes, and again, sometimes you won't get an answer. Sometimes people won't respond, but I think being persistent of trying to reach out to people and connect with people. There are all kinds of job boards, and things that, some of the big agencies and companies put out. The two, I always tell people the two hardest jobs in terms of what I was doing is the first job and then that first promotion. But it's and then what you do is you ultimately find your peers, the people that I started with 30 years ago in the business. Many of my close friends have now, have been up and down, but they're also running major corporations or major, successes in different parts of the business. And you find your peer group and stay connected with them for many, many years. But it's not easy getting started. But I think you have to just kind of put yourself out there. No different than if you were an actor and going auditions, or if you're a writer writing a script, or you're a director shooting a short. It's all kind of versions of the same thing, and it's a lot of rejection. But you have to keep going.
Okay, that gives an idea. Taking a look at it just a little bit differently in terms of misconceptions. What are the biggest misconceptions between the real and the apparent about the entertainment industry?
I think for years people saw it as this. We kind of all joke. A lot of us who've been doing it for a long time, like we kind of just missed out on the really the fun years. And I don't mean like craziness or parties, but it was a different, when I first started, it was a different business. It was much more relationship driven. You could call and ask someone to do a favor, buy this or help me out in this and that. And people were able to do it. And what's changed now is just the corporate nature of it. These companies are run by, they're driven by stock prices, and they have boards of directors and human resources departments and multiple different levels. And it's just different in terms of it's not as collegial and as it was. It's still a very somewhat consolidated business, but the companies that are running these businesses are the biggest companies in the world: Disney and Apple and Amazon, and things. And they don't work that way. And so fitting the entertainment business into those cultures is I think kind of been an eye opener for everybody. But it is just much more structured and business-like now, and you can't just sort of say, hey, let's just sort of try this. Everything is analyzed and scrutinized, and understandably so. The economics are very difficult these days. But I think what used to be perceived as, oh, it's so glamorous and so this and that. Well, it's hard work. It's still rewarding when you're doing something you love and you're proud of. But it's not all fun and games. Let me just say it that way.
Not always fun and games. Focusing on what the key success factors are, we had Bill Fay, who you worked with early on, as the former president of production at Legendary. He said that Legendary success was partially built on popular genres and data to back it up that stimulated strong investment and returns in feature. What does Eric Tannenbaum owe to his extraordinary success with great value propositions from research to execution on 2.5 Men, King and Queens, Mad About You, Party of Five, etc.?
I've been, and I think it's different on TV than it is on the feature side in terms of, data driven, especially when you're talking about big IP or, converting games or all that kind of stuff. It's a little different. It's more of a gut thing. And I know that's probably easy to say, but it's when you hear something that you really love and you feel something about it. I haven't been a big believer in there has to be something to say with that idea, because truthfully, there are no new ideas, right? They're all different versions of ideas that have been done before: family comedies, procedural shows, doctor shows, cop shows, spy shows, all that kind of stuff. So it becomes about specificity, it becomes about execution, it becomes about casting and writing. But I believe when there's something there to that idea, to that particular idea. When we first started 2.5 Men, the idea was really driven about the guy who created it, Chuck Lorre, is one of the greats in our business. He wanted to write about divorce. And he wanted to talk about his let's just say strong mother and how she formed him and his siblings. That was what that show was really about. It evolved to become 2.5 Men, but that was the underneath of that. The Mad About You was the exploration of a marriage. And Paul Reiser said to me, many years ago, when I first met him, was he had just got back from his honeymoon. He closed the door and he's like, oh shit, this is the rest of my life, And so, okay, so you understood what exploration of what a marriage looks like. And and as I said on Home Economics, it's within a family economic disparity of one brother's very successful in hedge fund business, one person is a medium level earning writer, and one is a social worker making no money. And say, okay, that's a lot. A lot of people say to me, well, that's me and my sisters, that's me and my brothers, that's my siblings and I, that's our family dynamic. And so I think when you can find that thing underneath it, then it really becomes clear to me, and then it's trying to convince other people to see it the same way you do. And that's just years of hearing ideas and reading scripts, and I've passed on things that have gone on to be very successful shows. But some days you just don't see it, or for whatever reason. But it as I said, it's a totally subjective business, and in television, research in television can be more of an asset in terms of looking at something and say they're not loving this storyline, or that character is not really working for them, or they don't but it's something that for years a lot of the people got very reliant on it and only listed the testing and research, and I think people fell into a trap in that too, because some of the greatest shows in history, I had nothing to do with Seinfeld, but that was one of the lowest testing shows in the history of of the business, and yet there was executives at NBC at the time who just saw something really funny in this wacky group of people, and clearly the show went on to change history. So I think the data-driven stuff and the analytics, I think probably the same in sports and anything else. Sometimes, a person doesn't pass the eyeball test, but they're just really good at what they do. So I think, like anything else in life, I think it needs to be moderated and needs to be used wisely and not totally reliant upon.
Appreciate that on subjectivity versus data. On a recurring theme of this podcast, you've had some outstanding success working with your wife, Kim. Could you be so kind to share the great experiences working with her and what you have learned and how she's balanced out so to make a more and better synergy?
Yes, absolutely. And that is usually the first question that people ask, is because most people say, "My God, I could never do that and work with my spouse." We always joke the working part is easy. It's the marriage part is the complicated part. We worked together long before we were ever a couple. I was in another relationship, as was she, and I had hired her to come work. I was head of TriStar Television, and I hired her to come be the head of comedy. She had actually worked for one of the true legends in our business, who, man, is no longer alive, but one of the greats named Fred Silverman, who was actually a longtime friend of my father's. So we had a long history together. And we just, we shared, I think, similar tastes, things that we liked. We had a lot of success in putting shows together. And then after I left Columbia TriStar and started this ATG business, she came with me and a couple other people. And then we put a really great team of executives together to do it. And, the nice part about kind of what I said before is the business is kind of 24/7. When your partner is there with you and like we can talk about it when we need to and not when we don't need to, or one of us can go deal with something and the other can deal with, the family or whatever it is. And I think we do have very complementary skill sets. I've always been better about putting new things together, and people say, rightly or wrongly, that I'm a pretty good salesman. Kim is very detail oriented. She's very focused. She can stand on a set and see things and make things better in an editing room, really roll up her sleeves and give notes on a script. And I don't want to say my attention span isn't the greatest, but I think I'm better in short doses with things. And yet she really has the ability to kind of, look under the tires and say, yeah, but really what we need to do is X, Y, and Z. And she's just better at that stuff than I am. I think she has more patience than I do. So I do think we collaborate and have proven to collaborate really well together. And we've hired good people together. And and I don't necessarily share every single, taste wise with her. And sometimes she says, you're doing too much, and wants me to put the brakes on a little bit, but she forces me to look at things in a way that I probably wouldn't. If it was just me, I'd just put my head down and go. And she is constantly reminding me to take a step back and look at it. And, does it really make sense and all that kind of stuff. And so I think we are a really good checks and balances, combination together. And it's served me and her and us really well.
That's great. That's a wonderful a story to share. And, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this, Eric. It's just been a wonderful time. You've had tremendous, extraordinary success, at times difficult and precious circumstances. And you've given our audience a real clear view of what it's like to sit at the top and what you look for in your entertainment industry. So thank you.
I appreciate it. I thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Hopefully, any insight, and I would happily follow up if there's anything that anybody else wants to ask.
Eric, guaranteed. We're going to take you up on that offer. Thanks again.
To connect with David, go to davidradlow.com. David's book set, The Principles of Cartel Disruption and Secret Stories of Leadership, Growth, and Innovation, are available wherever books are sold. This has been Sustainable Leadership and Disruptive Growth with David Radlow, a presentation of Forbes Books.